Today marks the end of the 6th Parliament. With just over a week to go until elections, Parliament has passed a number of key bills, including the National Health Insurance, and even saw former Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, resign over corruption allegations. So let's take stock of the outgoing Parliament, the highs and lows, with the acting National Speaker or acting Speaker of the National Assembly, Lechesa Tsenoli. Deputy Speaker and, let me say, acting Speaker of the National Assembly. The reason I'm tripping over this is because you've just given me an education before going on air that if you were the acting Speaker of Parliament, it would mean that you are the acting Speaker of both houses, when that actually is not the actual way that this is defined. You are the acting Speaker of the National Assembly, which is one of the houses of Parliament. Yes. The other one, of course, is the National Council of Provinces. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. So let's begin this conversation with rather sad news. This afternoon, the announcement came that James Self, a former member of Parliament, passed away, and he was also a member of the main opposition party in South Africa, Democratic Alliance. I'd like to give you this opportunity to convey your reflections.
You are right, Toli, that it is sad when some of the people we engage with robustly at the beginning of these 30 years that are coming to an end are passing on. It's absolutely sad indeed. I'm sure we should be conveying our condolences to the family, friends, and I nearly said comrades. They don't call themselves that in the DA, but to members of the DA who would feel the loss a lot more painfully because of having worked closely with him. Yeah. He was an experienced parliamentarian, and it's sad that we've had to lose him. Toli, may I also say to you that even as we did that just this last Saturday, it is important to communicate to your viewers and listeners that we also buried Joe Mzondeki, who was an activist of the DPSA, Disabled People of South Africa, who was critical. He came into Parliament in 2009 and so on for 2 terms. He was an absolute continuous learner who was very active politically, socially, including in communities wherever he served. Yeah. And many of his friends and disability activists, fellow activists, were with us in Sparkbrook where he was buried. It was very sad because I chair the South African Parliamentary Institute. So these ex-members constitute what we refer to as our alumni. We have designed a system so that we must tap on them and their parliamentary experience to be able to work with us when we introduce new members, as an example, so that they must be incorporated in programs for helping to speed up the induction of members of Parliament, given what they know and their experience of this process. So it's sad that we are losing them as we're doing now.
Well, thank you for those words, Acting Speaker. Let's then get on with the business of why you are here. And we thank you sincerely for coming through. The work of Parliament, as I understand it, 58 bills are before the 6th Parliament as it wraps its work. How much of that has been passed and how much of it is going to be work in progress, in other words, carried over into the 7th Parliament?
Before I answer that question, let me, having spoken about sad affairs, let me go into the good news you just announced here, that we are glad that Justice Maya has been recommended for the President. Indeed. This time, we would like to say to the President, do find your pen quickly and get Justice Maya in the chair. I think it's a great progress in society, the first female to occupy the position, the ceiling is broken. Therefore, the little girls who are coming on to the scene now know that you can go up to that level in society.
Yeah.
She's one of the heads of the three arms of the state. The Judiciary, which works with the government led by the president, and the Parliament is led by the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces and the Speaker of the National Assembly. Yeah. And together, they constitute heads of the three arms of the state. And that's a very important progress in general in that respect, because of what we have always, or rather it's defined in our vision of the Constitution, a non-sexist, non-racial democratic society.
Yeah. So you're stealing my thunder. You're stealing my thunder here,
go for it,
Speaker, because
go for it, yeah.
I wanted to bring that where we would talk about the composition of Parliament today versus what it was before a democratic South Africa, and of course fitting given that we are celebrating 30 years into democracy. But nonetheless, you've now addressed that. So let me bring you back.
Not at all, not enough, yes.
Yes.
For example, Toli, I would like you to request your team to go and look at a painting of Madiba, Nelson Mandela, and his first cabinet. It's a painting. It's a piece of artwork. It's fascinating. But its contrast to the current cabinet, for example, that cabinet 30 years ago and the cabinet now is dramatic in the difference it shows.
Wow.
The president decided during the last reshuffle of cabinet to ensure that he has, in fact, slightly more than 50% females in the cabinet. So the cabinet is constituted by the 50-50 quota that has been used as a campaign factor. But it's an important part of the progress towards an unsexist society, to demonstrate in practice that women are not just, there are 182 females in the National Assembly as an example, 42% of them. So the idea is to move towards increasing, not just quantitatively, but also quality in terms of the senior positions they occupy and the leadership they take responsibility for. So that in the overall, what we see in society is a more accurate reflection of the population dynamics of our society.
You've already started this conversation, Acting Speaker, so I might as well get on with it.
Sure.
Because part and parcel, or as we reflect on the 30 years of democracy, that Parliament, if the information I've read is correct, it says pre-1994, Parliament only had 3 female members. Today, we can boast about a 46% membership of women of that Parliament. That's something to celebrate, is it not?
It is. What dramatizes is that there were no female toilets. Helen Suzman, who was the only one at the time in the National Party Parliament, they had to use one of the male toilets and, cover up the urinal.
Wow.
Because it was meant for men only. And when the new crops of MPs arrived there, the lot of demolition that happened internally to correct the availability of facilities friendly to women was a critical input. And now this, such diversion of public facilities were taken for granted in the past because of the chauvinism, that women wouldn't be public representative, they wouldn't be in Parliament. The drama of that transformation is huge. It's not dissimilar to people with disability. One of the things that I don't know whether I missed it, I only got it subsequently, but I didn't hear emphasis on how we are also determined to make the new Parliament disability friendly. So that in accordance with the constitutional decision, for example, to make sign language a 12th language, and that the Constitutional Court itself took a decision to wrap us by excising a clause in the Copyright Act that prevented blind people from accessing books and literature generally, to be able to translate it into Braille for use by blind people, for example. It was in the law, and so we were scolded by the Constitutional Court by striking it out as unconstitutional, making it possible now for blind people to be able to access any written stuff and translate it, for making it accessible. The irony is that by doing that, the Constitutional Court is taking a leap into progress we do want to make of making things accessible to people with disabilities. So such provisions will feature in the entire precinct of Parliament. We have given that political instruction.
All right. And those would constitute, at least in my view, Acting Speaker, it would constitute the highs of what we have seen Parliament transforming from what it was pre-1994 to where it is today. Lots of positives. In fact, right at the beginning, as democracy was ushered in, Frinijinwala was the first Speaker of the National Assembly, a woman. Of course, she's no longer with us now. But how sad that, Deputy Speaker, you are now in the position you occupy as acting Speaker of the National Assembly, because the Speaker of the National Assembly had to resign owing to corruption allegations. That surely is disappointing.
No, obviously it is disappointing. I would imagine she also, in her statement of recognition, was very explicit, stating that she does so in order to save Parliament because of the nature of work it does in society, from the embarrassment of having to deal with things that were not done in Parliament but outside Parliament in her previous work. It is said that we have such a situation. And of course, in general, the thrust of the work we are doing is to robustly insist on integrity and ethical management of public affairs. If you speak to the Hawks and to the NPA and the list of cases that are already in court, over 200 of them arising partly from the Zondo Commission and so on, of cases that are going through the processes in the courts. One of the irritating things amongst the citizenry is the speed with which these things happens. But unfortunately, this is what the rule of law, which we claim to accept in the Constitution, demands, that we must not act. My premier in the Free State, Mistress Winky Direko, used to say to us when essentially she disagrees with us, hurry slowly, my child, hurry slowly. But the profound view was that the NPA learned and is learning an important lesson. When you rush cases to court, they get thrown out badly. And that too is bad news. Like there are people who are getting bails now who should not have gotten it, but because of the problems of rushing some of the cases, we can claim that to court before they can be acted upon and so on.
It would seem to me, Deputy Speaker, and very ingenious of you, that you are trying to make an excuse for why Chief Justice Zondo had to complain very publicly that Parliament does not seem to have learnt lessons from the state capture era, and that is to hold the executive to account and, in part, make sure that the recommendations of that Commission of Inquiry are implemented, at least on the part that affected Parliament, because he did not have very good words for that House either.
And that was unfortunate, because if he had taken a call, as he has often done when the need arises, to speak to the leadership in Parliament, he would have received a surprising amount of work that had been done already. Out of the number, roughly 19, it's close to 23. Let me put, that's an estimate number. 19 of those resolutions have been implemented. Some of them are in progress, including the 3. Work has been done towards their implementation. To have made the remarks he made, I am convinced, I know him personally, for years, he would have said a completely different story if he had before him that kind of report. I take a blame as part of the presiding officers that we were too slow in communicating what we had done in order to implement those decisions. That's one part of the issues that relates to Parliament itself. There are other issues that relates to the executive, over which when he presented the report to Parliament, we said, those we will hold the executive to account.
Yeah.
And that there has been robust engagement with the executive. The classical example, let me just say this. The Section 194 decision to remove the public protector, to remove 2 judges, is a dramatic example, rather, of the necessity for accountability, implementing legislation that prevents wrongdoing when we are, in other words, in positions of seniority, especially, that the law is not going to discriminate on the basis of the position you are in, but will be implemented dramatically to effect the results such as I'm talking about.
Indeed. And the cases that you are pointing out now, the 2 judges impeached, including the impeachment of the public protector, precedent setting. However, there are those who say you did falter, though, on the question of Phala Phala. You let the president go off scot-free.
Yes, that one is a matter for debate because one of the things that is expected of us is that we have created institutions, especially as Parliament. We are not the executive. So it behoves us to act responsively to reports that these matters are before the following things. Even if the panel said what it said, it would still be our responsibility to hear and call to account the institutions that were investigating and doing that work. How much more should we not be allowing them to complete their work and give us information with which to then proceed and confront the president with it?
You think that it could still be revived and processed by Parliament?
Not revived. If those institutions produces evidence of wrongdoing in the angles in which they were involved in investigation, of course it cannot come out into the open. It's a public intervention. It's a public intervention. It can't be ignored. We can't ignore the police if they say, no, we think in this instance the following things altogether, and they bring that to the House. So the president will have to answer to that.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the key legislation that has gone through Parliament, and key among them, because of time constraints, is the NHI. Years in the making, painstaking research, but here we are today. We have one province that's decided to reject it outright, and that province, I guess it may come as no surprise, given that the party that runs the province is also the very first one to say, we are going to court because we don't believe that the NHI, now that it is an act, is going to take healthcare in this country any forward. Your reflections on that?
It's going to be very interesting what the courts are going to say to those who are making those claims there. This is a piece of legislation, as you correctly say, that has gone through for over 10 years of public engagement and so on. Now, one of the consequences of public participation is that people would like to see the results of their having involved themselves in the lawmaking process and the outcome be visible, that they participated, they were heard, they might be disagreed with, but there is action that demonstrates that they were heard. if you prolong your public policy, continually going back to people about the same thing, they end up saying you're actually playing games with us. You don't mean what you want to do with this bill. You are looking for something which you are not seemingly getting from us. We can't afford that. Public participation is successful when people feel, they would say to me, Lechesa, but we told you before that this is what's wrong. Why aren't we seeing the result? Similarly, one of the, this past week, there was a function. One of the researchers who came from the trade unions of the ANC, I may use that example, was in the core team that started thinking about the national health insurance, learning from experiences elsewhere in the world. Now, day before yesterday, he was announced that he's resigning. He's not resigning. He's retiring.
Yes.
So I asked him, so are you doing so because just after the president signed NHI, he just laughed off the idea because it was an interesting connection from my own observation that here's a man who was amongst the key campaigners for the national health. Let me say this to you, Kul. The amount of money that goes to support, for example, the private health sector is huge. It's 4.2 billion, roughly. This is an estimate. The rest of the 86% of the population, and it services 16% of the population, 86% of the rest of the population must get the support of the state, also 4.2 billion. Now, if there is any evidence of public resources unjust distribution, that's the one, in my opinion, okay? This is my reasoning.
Yeah.
And I've had one or two other people in the leadership of the program arguing so, that there must be a different redistribution of resources to improve the quality of health infrastructure in the country, including strengthening primary health care.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is not just going to be what the state does itself and various parts of the state generally to facilitate the people get to have the quality of health they want to get, which is what it wants to do.
Well, if the Democratic Alliance is to be believed, they are of the view that why they are saying that healthcare will likely go down the drain in the country if NHI is not challenged bears testament to key officials of this country, i.e. the president. They're saying that he is on a medical scheme that is partly funded by the state, and that's part of the reason why he won't get rid of his medical aid card, because there is no certainty about where this piece of legislation is going to take the country.
Okay, let me put it this way. In my opinion, and this is what I expressed in my farewell function, in my farewell speech, that the importance of the passing of the National Health Insurance Act is to provide certainty to millions in the public who are too poor to be able to afford the expensive private sector medicine, or rather treatments and so on and so on. And that it is important that it be confronted head on, that effectively the resources that must be provided to everyone. Essentially, when we who constitute part of those elements who are in those medical aid schemes, it's class suicide. We are committing class suicide. We are saying, yes, this path is correct. It enables the resources to be spread equitably with everybody getting access to good health care. It must not be because they are poor and therefore they don't get good health care. The United Nations Development Program has done an assessment of health systems in the country. We are, I suspect, second to the United States of America in the distortions of our health system. And what we are doing is to reverse that, to make health accessible to the majority of people. people must not depend on how big their pockets are to be able to get good health.
Yeah.
They must get it because they're human beings, and we claim that we want Batu Pili in the programs that we have put in place. We must do that actively. Yeah. It is long overdue, if I may say so.
Deputy Speaker, we are out of time. I would have wanted to ask you what the 7th Parliament you think is going to look like with the introduction, hopefully after this election, of independence. But we'll probably save that for another day. I want to talk about you as we part. Are you coming back into the 7th Parliament? I know that you have spoken publicly about your own health conditions, and I'd like for you to tell us whether or not you still think that you've got that energy to serve.
I have the energy. I have recovered significantly from the stroke that hit me in July last year.
Yeah.
I've been able to do lots of stuff. And of course, you learn lessons on how to take care of yourself as well along the way and increase that level of intensity as you go along. But Toli, I've never on my own taken an arbitrary decision to release myself from any employment. In the past, I was fired from work when I worked incidentally at the hospital in Bloemfontein in Plenomi as a clerk there.
Yes.
But, and subsequently somewhere else. But the point I'm making is that the decisions about the work I'm going to do in the next few years are also dependent on what the South African Communist Party and the African National Congress decides about me. I said that I think I've done some interesting things in the state to the best of my ability and with a little integrity and ethical management of public affairs transparently, that I hope if I made mistakes, made some people angry, sorry about it, but if it was ethical and of integrity, it had to be done.
Yes.
Yes. So I will hear from head office what it wants to do with my life.
Okay.
I'm in the meantime preparing myself to be supportive of the entire legislative sector, but also of others who I think can perform better with a little coaching, mentoring, and support. That's my intention.
Lechesa Tsenoli, I have to thank you very much for your time, and it has been, at times, a very, very interesting parliament to watch. You telling people to remove Delela. We're going to leave the conversation there before I get carried away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
This evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Please remain there for a moment while I link to the break.